Hello and happy Friday the 13th fans. Welcome to my review of the fourth installment in the Friday the 13th franchise, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, aka Friday the 13th Part 4. And yeah, basically, for spoiler alert for any of you guys that, haven't seen this movie, I'm sure all of you have, this is indeed not the final chapter, as there are plenty more Friday the 13th films to come. So it is a very poorly aged title, but the best way I justify the title is by saying that it's I consider it the final chapter of human Jason and not Jason as a whole, because after this point, Jason will, become a zombie. Of course, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but that's how I justify this poorly aged title. So since this is during Scooby Month, I assume that last time I did a review of one of the new Scooby-Doo movies episodes, which I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm recording this ahead of time, obviously, so I don't know which new Scooby-Doo movies episode I reviewed, but I hope you guys did enjoy it. Normally, I would not do anything but Scooby-Doo reviews for this month. However, Jason Voorhees is my favorite slasher, and I cannot pass up the opportunity to review one of his movies for Friday the 13th. And it's become a tradition on my channel, so we can't let this tradition die. We got plenty of Jason content to review on Friday the 13th. So today I'll be covering Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which was released on April 13th, 1984. The short synopsis of the film is: a carefree lakeside vacation is interrupted by the re-emergence of our favorite killer, Jason Voorhees. After he escapes from a morgue, leaving bodies in his wake, Jason travels to Camp Crystal Lake, where a group of friends are staying. The teens meet some locals, Tommy and Trish, as well as a secretive hiker, Rob. As the group of teenagers engages in drunken debauchery, their numbers begin to dwindle and pieces of the past resurface. So as per usual, I'll of course be watching this film on the 8-movie box set collection of the first 8 Friday the 13th films. It's a great box set. I definitely highly recommend it to Friday the 13th fans who want to, experience the first all the Paramount films. They're all here on this nice little box set. They have some nice goody special features, and it's pretty cheap, so it's not that much money. It's not much out of your wallet. And there's a lot of good special features that I will be covering, when I do my review of it. So we got commentary by director Joe Zito, and screenwriter Barney Cohen, and editor Joel Goodman. We also have a fan commentary by Adam Green and Joe Lynch. We have Lost Tales from Camp Blood Part 4. We have Jason's Unlucky Day, 25 years after Friday the 13th, the final chapter. We have Slash Scenes. We have The Lost Ending. We have The Crystal Lake Massacres Revisited Part 1. And we have Jimmy's Dead Dance Moves. And of course, there's also the original theatrical trailer on there as well. There's a lot of goodies on here for us to tackle, and I'll be tackling all the special features after I go through the movie, and scene by scene. I will of course go over the special features and tell you guys which ones I prefer over others. As far as the reception for this film goes, from my experience, I believe most fans really love this film. This is considered one of the most highly regarded films in the Friday the 13th franchise. It's usually between this and Part 6. These two are rated the highest when it comes to Friday the 13th. There are, of course, other minority people who will probably pick other, Friday the 13th films. But usually, 4 and 6 are the top 2 contenders most of the time that are considered to be favorites of the Friday the 13th franchise. And I'll give my thoughts on Part 6 when I get there. But why don't we take a look at this film to see whether I consider it my favorite of the franchise and whether I truly believe with and agree with the fans if this is, one of the best films in the franchise or whether it's, maybe overrated. So Let's take a look at the film to see whether I think it is a good or bad Friday the 13th film. The movie begins the same way the last two movies did, with another fucking pointless recap of the last movie. However, unlike part 2 and 3 that just went over the last movie, the final chapter does something pretty good and unique and different, which is that it splices together the last 3 movies and has Paul has the scene of Paul at the campfire telling the tale of Jason, while you see clips from various scenes of the first 3 movies. And it kind of is like a really good tone center and a good like overview of the series at that point, that honestly you don't even need to watch the first 3 movies and you could be well informed about about Jason just by diving into the final chapter. It's probably the best of the recaps. It doesn't spend way too long on like scenes from the previous movies. It just kind of does like a quick montage to get people up to speed who forgot the last 3 movies or haven't seen the last 3 movies. Then we properly begin the movie coattailing off the ending of part 3, where we see a joint police and paramedic operation at the Crystal Lake's Higgins Haven property, as we see the bodies of all the several teenagers from the last movie are placed in ambulances after the massacre of the previous evening. The victims' families are all at the hospital mourning their loss. Included with the bodies is the hideously deformed Jason Voorhees, the killer of the last 2 movies. After having been hit on the head with an axe at the end of the previous film, he's mistaken as one of the dead bodies and taken to the Wessex County morgue. After we meet Mr. Sleazeball himself, the Axel, who's the coroner, being sleazy to one of the nurses on the night duty. I think her name is Nurse Robbie. We then see that later that night, Jason wakes up and kills the coroner, Axel Burns, by slitting his throat with a fucking surgical hacksaw and snapping his neck while he's watching some, old style, porn maybe, or something to get off of, I don't know. Then Jason next goes to Nurse Robbie Morgan, who's soon gutted after with a scalpel by Jason as he makes his escape back to Crystal Lake. We then get introduced to three of the protagonists that will be following throughout this movie. The Jarvis family. Trish Jarvis, the sister and daughter of the family. Tommy Jarvis, the youngest and a son of the family, and the only boy of the house, and their mother. Their mother, who's the head of the house. And then we get introduced the following afternoon to a group of teenagers driving to Crystal Lake, which is our usual Friday the 13th slaughter fodder for a weekend getaway, having rented the house at the edge of the forest, which is the house right across from the Jarvis family. So we got a new batch of teen fodder. And we got the Jarvis family, who are like emotional anchor for this film, the people that we really care about. Although I will say there probably are some people in the group that we do care about, and there are standouts in the group. But the group consists of Paul and his girlfriend Samantha. Yes, there's another fucking Paul. My name seems to be very common in these Friday the 13th movies. He's not as good as the last Paul. Paul from part 2 was much better than this Paul. This Paul is not the best of people. I'll say that. You got Doug and Sarah, who are mutually attracted to each other. The jokester named Ted, who's kind of like the guy who wants to get laid and is also the jokester. And then, besides Ted, who's one of the memorable ones, we got Jimmy, which you'll come to find out why he's memorable later on in the film, besides him being played by Kristen Glover, who Ted bullies over his recent breakup and, makes fun of him for it. As they approach Crystal Lake, they take brief notice of Pamela Voorhees' gravestone, which says that she died in 1979, which I don't know if that's supposed to be the actual thing or an error, because it does reinvigorate that debate of when the original Friday the 13th actually takes place. I still believe it was in 1980. I think it was just an error. But, you know, some people believe otherwise, so. And then soon after that, they find a hitchhiker who's a fat hippie hitchhiker who holds out a sign asking for a ride. But without any room in their car, they continued onwards and pass her, and she flips him off after Ted makes a remark towards her. And then we get a fantastic scene of Jason walking up behind the woman and thrusting a knife through her neck, killing her. The Banana Girl death is honestly the most iconic of this, not only of kills in this franchise, but one of the best of this movie. It's so amazing how a character that really doesn't have that much screen time and doesn't really say anything has one of the more memorable kills, but it could be just how creative it is. Y'all, she's eating a fucking banana, getting her throat, you know, getting a knife through her throat. Easily one of the best scenes in the film. I love it. The teenagers leave their car to hike through the woods in search of their cabin, and they meet local twins, Tina and Terry, as they're enjoying a bike ride. So besides Sarah, who goes off and wanders back to the car, Ted, Jimmy, and the others go skinny dipping in the lake, because of course they do. And the teenagers' neighbors for the weekend, Trish and Tommy Jarvis, drive by while heading back from the store. Some of the groups are familiar with Trish and invite her to their party later that night. However, Trish is more concerned about shielding Tommy's excited eyes from the nudity in front of him, and goes and continues driving after that. So their car breaks down further into the forest, and what does Trish decide to do? Have her fucking little brother take care of the mechanical things. Yes, because this young boy somehow knows how to fix a car. Like, okay, Trish, like, even though he looks capable, it should not be his job to do that. However, thankfully, they receive help from the final protagonist of this film that we meet, which is Rob, a stranger who claims to be hunting for bears, despite Tommy's objection to such animals being in the area at all. Rob helps them with the car, gets it started. They give him a ride to where into the forest. As a show of gratitude, Trish drives Rob to her house, and there he is briefly introduced to the estranged Mrs. Jarvis, and Tommy shows him his homemade Halloween mask before he heads out to set up camp. And it's basically like a good way of like Tommy, like, you know, showing off his, like, you know, his design stuff, you know, like, and also Tom Savini's, you know, and others, you know, the costume people's, you know, mask. Trish and Tommy then head out again to buy some more goods, and as the night falls, the teenagers begin their party and in the company of their guests, Tina and Terry. And when Jimmy goes up to dance with one of the twins, oh boy, he does this dance. What the fuck am I looking at? I've heard apparently this is actually something Crispin Glover did at nightclubs, and that's how he actually danced, but it is a fucking weird ass dance. I don't know what this is, but at the same time, it's kind of amazing how ridiculous it is that I can't turn my eyes away from it. It definitely livens up the scenes with the teenagers, I'll say that.
How come you turn that off?
As the group gets acquainted with some slow dance music, Samantha becomes angry with Paul when he shows no reluctance to dance with one of the twins. So to ease her frustration, she heads outside to go skinny dipping and tells Paul about it, saying, "Come on, I'm gonna go skinny dipping if you wanna, that's where you'll find me. Hoping that'll come. Noticing a raft floating in the lake, she swims out to it to relax, waiting for Paul to arrive. And once she's finally given up that he's probably not going to show up, she gets stabbed underneath the raft through the stomach by Jason from underneath. At the party, Paul starts to feel guilty and heads outside to check up on Samantha. When he does, he finds her body in the raft, and Paul frantically swims back to the shore to seek help. And then, oh fuck, he gets impaled through the groin with a spear by Jason, who was hiding under the pier. Oh, this is one of the more, like, the worst deaths in this movie, and maybe even the entire franchise. Like, that's the one area you don't want to fucking get stabbed in. And the fact that this guy has the same name as me, and he gets like the fucking one of the worst deaths in the franchise with a fucking spear to his groin is fucking awful. It makes me whinge every time. It makes me appreciate my nutsack more. Rob hears Paul's screams, and he heads through the woods to investigate. He finds nothing, but he returns to find Jason has entered his tent and ransacked it and made a mess of it. He basically just destroyed his gun, though, and just left. Then back at the party, Jimmy and Tina hit it up and develop an attraction, much to the annoyance of Ted, whose increasing desperation, compels him to Terry and the other's twin. And Jimmy and Tina head upstairs to have sexy time in Paul's room, leaving Terry with Ted. Not that Paul's going to matter, since, he just fucking lost his dick just a couple seconds ago. After finding a vintage stag film, Ted sets up a film projector so he, Terry, Doug, and Sarah have something fun to watch. So now, put off from Ted completely, Terry gives up and gets ready to leave. She gets into a brief argument with Tina when she's trying to get her to leave with her, basically cock-blocking or her sister. But she just tells her sister, leave me alone, head home by yourself. And she's forced to leave the house alone. This, in turn, gives Jason the perfect opportunity to strike. We don't actually see it, on screen, although the lightning shows it, where she gets impaled with the same spear that was used to kill Paul, which and then gets thrown to the side of the house, stuck on it basically. Soon after, Jason kills Mrs. Jarvis next door as she heads outside to investigate her house's sudden power loss, and is wondering where everybody is, where's her daughter, her son, I guess they didn't tell her, their kids didn't tell her that they were gone, they're going to leave. But yeah, Mrs. Jarvis gets killed, and we don't actually see her death. She just, has a face of shock and then dies off screen. There is something, in the special features that shows that there was going to be an overt thing of showing her that she did in fact die. I mean, obviously, I'm pretty sure, most likely she's dead. It's very much implied, but I think the director said he didn't think it was right to kill her off, and who might argue with that? It's not that necessary. We already got enough kills with the teen slaughter fodder. So, unaware that 3 of her friends are all dead, Doug and Sarah finally decide to begin their sexual relationship and go upstairs to the shower. So we're having sexy time everywhere. One in the bedroom, one in the fucking shower. And as Jimmy and Tina finish having their sexy time, Jimmy sneaks downstairs to tease Ted with her underwear. Because Ted was basically being pricked the whole time, thinking that he was going to get laid. But, he ended up not getting anyone, which is fair because he's douchebag. Though Ted is pretty much drunk enough to with alcohol to not really give a shit, so he doesn't care. And as Jimmy goes into the kitchen to get another bottle, Jason sneaks into the house, and Jimmy asks where the corkscrew is from Ted, in a very drunken state. He sounds slurred when he says it. And Jason gives him the corkscrew by stabbing it with the corkscrew through his hand, followed by burying a fucking meat cleaver in his head, too. Oh boy, what a fantastic death Jimmy had. Jason sure helped him out. What a great guy.
Hey, Ted, where's that corkscrew, that fancy corkscrew for the wine bottle? Ted? Hey! Ted! Ted! Hey, Ted, where the hell's the corkscrew?
We then cut back to upstairs where Tina's getting dressed and she notices Terry's bicycle is still parked outside. Very concerned about what's going on with her sister, she moves closer to the window to look for her sister, wondering if she's still out there waiting for her in the rain. And holy fucking shit, Jason just breaks through the goddamn glass of the window and throws her onto the teen's parked car, killing her on impact. I mean, holy shit, Jason. I love that you're going all in, but can you slow it down a little bit? I'm trying to keep up with all these kills here. Damn, I think he's pissed off that this is his last movie. Next door, Trish and Tommy return from wherever the fuck they were going, coming from, and find the house empty. Trish heads outside to Rob's tent to see if he has done anything to do with, their mother's disappearance or what's going on. And Rob returns and almost kills her with a machete, thinking that she was Jason again, so he came prepared this time, hoping to ambush Jason. And then he finally explains to Trish the real reason he's in the forest. He wants to avenge his younger sister Sandra and her boyfriend Jeff, who, if you recall, were both characters that were killed in Friday the 13th Part 2 by Jason several days earlier. And that, though considering this takes place in one weekend, Rob took, I guess, 2 days to mount a counterattack against Jason to hunt for him. It is a stretch, but since the movies, were released farther than that, you can try to think of it in your own canon. Yeah, it's a weird timeline with this whole weekend thing. They could have just sparsed it each year rather than Jason coming back like the next fucking day. They didn't need to do that, but oh well, that's the timeline, so you can't do anything about it. If you remember, Sandra and Jeff were impaled in the bed by Jason, which was awesome. I love that kill. Trish is very adamant that Jason's dead, but with the area oddly quiet around there, she can't really get rid of her doubts. And Rob is, telling her, Jason is alive. There's 2 people at the hospital missing. It's very quiet around this area. With rowdy teenagers next door, you think you would hear them, and you can't find your mom. Like, there's clearly something going on here. Like, he's right. Jason is back and he's still alive. But we cut back at the rental home where Jason re-enters the building very quickly, I might add, to kill Ted, luring him to the projector screen by cutting one of the reels, and he stabs him through the head from behind the projector screen. Jason's on a roll right now. He's on his A game. He's not messing around. So let's keep the streak going, Jason. He's not done yet, though. Upstairs, Sarah finishes her shower with Doug to get dressed, and as she's dyeing her hair, Jason walks upstairs, and Doug thinks at first thinks it's Sarah, then he thinks it's Paul, but it turns out to be not either of them. It's just Jason, and he smashes his hand through the glass and Doug's head against the bathroom wall, and basically crushes him to get death against it, which is fucking awesome and a great effect. Sarah then returns to find him dead and begins panicking and calling out the names of the others for help. She runs downstairs, and as Sarah's desperately trying to get through a locked door, Jason throws a fucking axe through it and fatally strikes her in the chest, ending his amazing streak of killing these teens. Well, it was a great run, Jason. You did it. You know what? You're doing very well for your supposed last movie. So good job. After checking if Tommy's okay, Trish, Rob, and the family dog Gordon run over to the rental house to check on the teenagers. When they find that they can't call anyone in the house, and they realize that their mother hasn't returned. They go to see check on the teenagers to see what's going on over there. They find the house oddly empty for a house filled with rowdy teenagers, and Rob and Trish first decide to check the basement. But Trish decides to leave to head upstairs while leaving Rob in the basement, and after something frightens Gordon so much, Gordon jumps out of a window and runs away, never to be seen again. And thankfully, I've heard people debate whether Gordon actually died in this movie or not. I personally don't think he died. I don't like the idea that this dog died. I really hate the idea. Originally, apparently, I guess there was plans to make it, very clear that Jason was the one that killed the dog. Thankfully, they didn't do that, and it's kind of just up to you to decide whether you think the dog isn't dead. I don't think it's dead. I think it just ran away, and Jason didn't care about it, because Jason killing dogs is not his character, and I don't, that's more of a Michael Myers type of thing, not Jason. So no, I don't think the dog is dead. Yes, it was a second story window, but we see Trish jump out the same fucking height and she somehow survives, so I don't think it's a stretch to say that the dog probably survived. Upstairs, Trish finds Doug's body in the shower, and it's still running. And she finally is forced to admit Jason is alive, and Trish runs back down to Rob screaming that he's here, but Rob and Trish decide to head up, but as they're heading back up the stairs collapse, causing Rob to drop his knife or machete. I think it's knife. And he runs back down to go get it, and Jason takes full advantage of this and gets into a scuffle with Rob. With Rob saying he's killing me, kind of like that, and it was very much overt, because I guess the director had probably heard a story one time that somebody did say that while somebody was killing them, so it's pretty unique. Also, I'll say that he's fucking narrating his own death, which is quite sad that Rob ends the movie this way. But somebody, I guess you can't have three survivors. Somebody else has to get killed. I would have liked if they all three survived, but oh well. Knowing that she really wouldn't be much of a help anyways, Rob basically urges Trish to get away and run away while she has the chance before he, of course, meets his demise. And what does Trish decide to do with Rob screaming frantically that he's being killed and telling Trish to run? She heads up the stairs a little bit, faces the doorway, and then fucking goes back down, wondering if Rob is dead. Yes, he's fucking dead. We just heard him. And she then runs back upstairs, and Jason tries to grab her and tries to kill her. But thankfully she has the machete and finally uses it. But it's like, come on, Trish, make up your mind. Are you, what are you doing here? You got to make your decisions here. It's life or death in this case. Still, I don't hate Trish as a final girl. I'll talk about her later. But I think she's good, and every final girl has moments of stupidity. So this was just Trish's moment of stupidity, not knowing where she was supposed to go. I guess maybe she was in denial on whether Rob was dead and wanted to feel like she was doing something. I have no clue. But Trish eventually runs out of the house. Well, she tries to 2 ways. She tries the front door and sees a body laying out. And rather than jumping over that, which is another stupid thing, she just kind of runs to the back door and then realizes Jimmy's tied like with nailed. His two hands are nailed, and his whole body is blocking the door, which is really cool. So she can't get out that way, and she decides to break a window and go out that way. You really couldn't jump over the body, Trish? Come on now. And with Rob's machete in her hand, she runs home to start nailing the door shut when she gets back home with Tommy. And the reinforced door does a little bit of help, but not by much. Like, it's a nice idea, but it's fucking Jason. Of course he's gonna come through that door. And Jason does his classic corpse toss through the fucking window by throwing Rob's corpse through the window. But he doesn't actually go through the window. Instead, I think he does at first, or at least he tries to kill Tommy through another window, not too far away from that window that he threw Rob's corpse through. But Trish, stabs him and gets him off, and then he decides to go through the door and fucking rams through it and is able to get through it with ease, so showing that nailing the door shut didn't do jack shit. And once he gains entry, Jason gets inside and he throws a fucking hammer at Trish, which just barely misses her by inches. He is pissed. He is not fucking around. He wants this girl dead. And I mean, to be fair, it's his final movie. He's got no other teens left to kill. He's upset that he has no more fodder to kill. He wants to get the job done. He wants to get these fuckers off. He wants to kill them. So Trish and Tommy run upstairs into Tommy's room, and they try to reinforce his door as well with, by putting his shelf up against the door to see if that'll block it. It kind of does a little bit of blocking the door, but it doesn't do that much. Because of course Jason starts hacking at the door down with his axe, prompting Trish to get, Tommy's computer monitor and smashing it over Jason's head once he starts to gain entry into the doorway and moving the shelf out of the way. And it looks like Trish had succeeded for a little bit, but no, so this is Jason, and Jason's just screwing around with her. He wakes the fuck back up, and his regenerative powers gets him right back up, and he's not down for long. But the time he is out, Trish uses it for her advantage and, tries to sneak past. And once he does wake up, she tries to lure Jason away from Tommy, giving him the chance to escape, giving him time to escape while she lures him back to the rental house for another fucking chase. When Tommy tries to go after both of them and on his way out, he finds some of Rob's newspaper clippings on Jason, specifically the picture of Jason as a little kid, and he reads on how Ginny overcame Jason in part 2. So this springing an idea for him, Tommy decides to do something very similar, which is actually just as cool. It's not as good as Ginny's. I say Ginny's is much smarter, but it is a nice idea, which is Tommy begins shaving his hair in the hopes that he resembles Jason as a child, which will hopefully confuse him. Nice idea, and we'll see how it works. But meanwhile, we cut to Trish, who returns to Slasher Ground Zero in the house, and is weakened after she jumps out the second-story window of the rental home and lands on her back. Jason is not sure that she's dead, but he's going to go finish the job anyways. And yes, Trish ends up being alive, which further, makes me think that Gordon is most likely alive. If she can survive a fucking fall like that, he can too. When she walks back to the house, Tommy, makes his presence still known. This obviously distresses Trish, as she did all that basically for nothing, as Tommy did not use this to his advantage to run away. And Jason enters the home once again, and a tired Trish dodges. She doesn't. She does. She actually doesn't. She swings the machete multiple times at him, sensing that his presence is his presence behind her. She then gets a good shot on his left hand and splits it right down the middle in half and pierces his chest a little. And the fucking cut through the hand is really gnarly and awesome. This damage obviously doesn't do much to Jason, though, because he's Jason Voorhees. And he continues advancing towards Trish. And as Jason begins strangling Trish, Tommy runs downstairs, completely bald, and calls out to him. And the plan does actually work, as he does confuse Jason into thinking he's a little kid. It's not as cool or makes as much sense as his mother, Ginny dressing up as his mother and tricking him. But I'll buy it. I think it's a neat idea of Jason looking at a mirror of himself or seeing himself in Tommy. And Jason is, focused on Tommy as he was when Ginny pretended to be Pamela. And this gives Trish enough time to swing the machete again at him. But it only scrapes Jason's face and cuts off his hockey mask and reveals his face, just like in every movie. And Trish is horrified by Jason's deformed face. And that face is really great. And drops the machete, giving him an opportunity to finally kill her. However, to protect his sister, Tommy grabs the machete that Trish had, and instead drives it into Jason's skull, which finally does enough, does the job, as he finally collapses from it, furthering the blade further into his head. And it's really cool that Jason, gets stuck, Tommy gets the machete on his head, and it slides down his eyeball. It's fucking crazy. Believing it to be all over, Tommy and Trish, embrace each other, hugging, being like, it's finally over, happy that it is. However, Tommy sees Jason's hand twitch and does the very smart thing that not many other survivors do, and he grabs the machete and whacks at him repeatedly, and keeps shouting, "Die, die, die," over and over again, as Trish hysterically screams at Tommy to stop. But why should you stop? Make sure this motherfucker's dead. You want to get the job done. Tommy's not screwing around. This guy is trying to kill you, Can't take any chances. The film then cuts to some days later, where Trish is recovering on a hospital bed, and she's talking to the doctor about what happened to Tommy and how she's worried that something might be up with him because he kept repeatedly whacking at Jason. However, the doctor assures her that there was nothing abnormal in his behavior, and that it was natural of him to fight back against Jason and protect his sister and make sure that he died. They then bring in Tommy with his hair slowly regrowing, and he enters the room, and the two of them reunite and hug once more. And the film ends with the camera then cutting to Tommy, who's looking back at the camera with a cold stare, implying maybe he'll be the next Jason. Yeah, we'll see how that goes in the next film. I'm glad that never happened. That's the end of the film, but now let's go on to the special features, and there are plenty of special features in the Friday the 13th final chapter. The first, we have commentary by director Joseph Zito, screenwriter Barney Cohen, and editor Joel Goodman. So they give their insight into the film and all the stuff while going through the film. And of course, out of everything, I especially loved how they gave us talked about the audition process of the Banana Girl. And I know, it's weird. Out of all things, I picked the Banana Girl, but I can't help it. That the Banana Girl is so iconic, and her death is so iconic that it's just amazing that minute of a character gets some level of detail and backstory by the director and the screenwriter and the editor about the casting process and all that. Even a small character like her.
I remember that the script was Fat Girl Eating a Banana. So this character was named Fat Girl, and then I asked Barney to do draft of the script where we didn't call her Fat Girl. So when we cast it, the actors coming in wouldn't see that they were coming up for the part of Fat Girl. So Barney does this and renames her and gives her a character name. So, of course, during casting, the casting director has it wrong and she has the wrong draft and she gives her the Fat Girl thing. And I try to, cover and I'm bluffing my way through it and she says, that's okay. I know, it's Fat Girl. That's what I came in for.
Next, we have some fan commentary by Adam Green and Joe Lynch. So this is actually really cool because we get two commentaries. One about, from the director, screenwriter, and editor of the movie. And then just a fan commentary, from, guys like Adam Green and Joe Lynch who are in the business, but, are fans of Friday the 13th and are talking about the final chapter, which is one of their favorites. And it's really cool to hear, that from them. So you got two commentaries to go to watch, and it's really cool. Then, as per usual, we have Lost Tales from Camp Blood Part 4, which is honestly pretty lame. It's a lame short film. It's set in a hospital, which I guess is a nice change of setting. But the guy that, is after them is so clearly, just a guy in a hood. It is menacing, a guy in a hood with an axe, and it's not a bad setting, but, I kind of thought that maybe these, short films would have, at least somebody, even if it was a bad, Jason getup, at least, some type of Jason thing. And this guy does not look at all like Jason. He's just some guy that's, in a hood and is going after this other guy, and yeah, it's not that impressive of a short film. I was hoping for an actual Jason short film, and that didn't deliver on it, but it's there if you want to see it. Then we have Jason's Unlucky Day, 25 years after Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and this one special feature basically talks to different people that were involved in the making of the movie, the actors and actresses, the director, all of them. Tom Savini even gets some interview in them, and they basically just talk more about the movie, the behind the scenes stuff, and it's really cool. They look back at it after 25 years after the film has been released and look back on it. One cool thing is that Bonnie Hellman, who plays the Banana Girl, I know I keep bringing her up, but again, they interview her about the Banana Girl, and it's really cool because, again, the Banana Girl doesn't have any lines. She's just a throwaway character that gets killed, and yet we get so much about her, and I love every second of it. So it's definitely, when I saw that interview, I was genuinely surprised, but I was thrilled to hear from the Banana Girl herself about what it was like filming that scene.
Tom sat down and went through with me exactly physiologically what would happen if I was being stabbed through the throat, that it would pierce the voice box, that, all the things that it would go through and what would happen to you, what would happen to your voice, so that I could incorporate that as an actor. He had his hand on my head, but you will be absolutely safe, but don't fight me.
Then we have slash scenes, which are basically silent outtakes that director Joseph Zito takes us through. That he found these on old film reels that were just lying around, I guess, in Paramount, and it was really cool to see these outtakes, even though they didn't have any audio. That director Joseph Zito walked us through it and talked about the context of these outtakes. Then we have the lost ending, which goes over the original ending of the film that they decided to do. However, they scrapped it and ended up going for a different ending, which is basically the ending is Tristan and Tommy waking up, I believe, on the couch. I think they hear the police. So the police had finally arrived, and it was supposed to mirror the dream sequence of the first 3 movies, and that ended up not happening, which is probably for the best. We didn't need another dream sequence again like the last 3 movies. It was nice to change up the ending and just give us the ending at the hospital after Tommy whacks Jason a bunch of times. Still, though, it's an interesting watch. Definitely check it out if you're interested in it. Then we have the Crystal Lake Massacres Revisited Part 1, which is an odd piece. It's kind of like, it's a fake documentary that, goes over, kind of like a fake documentary about, if Jason was real, and people were actually interviewed about it. So it's kind of like if Jason was real, what a documentary of that would look like. It's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see where part 2 will go off. But yeah, then we have Jimmy's Dead Dance Moves, which is basically goes over the outtakes of that scene of Jimmy dancing like a weirdo. The iconic scene of Jimmy dancing as a weirdo. And it's pretty fun to see that iconic scene, all the outtakes of it, and how the other actors couldn't really keep a straight face. And, I honestly don't blame them, because, like, how can you keep a straight face when you see Crispin Glover dancing, looking like he's having a seizure on the dance floor? Then, of course, we have the original theatrical trailer, which is great. And then finally, we, for some reason, have a preview for another movie on a separate DVD. I don't know why. There's never been any previews on the previous 3 movies, so I have no idea why we have a preview on this unrelated horror movie. But I guess maybe they just decided to throw it in. Who knows? So that's really all the special features. I probably would say give the commentary by the director, screenwriter, and editor a watch, because I think that's a good one. Fan commentary is pretty good, great as well. I like Jason's Unlucky Day, 25 years after Friday the 13th final chapter. I enjoy the slash scenes and the lost ending, and Jimmy's Dead Dance Moves was also great as well, and the original theatrical trailer. So lots of goodies there. Not too many bad ones, but give them all a watch or give whichever ones you're interested in. And now let's get into my final thoughts on the film and what I'm going to rank it. I'm going to give Friday the 13th, the final chapter, 5 stars out of 5. So yeah, this is a pretty perfect movie in my eyes. I feel like this movie really can do no wrong. It's really a fantastic Friday the 13th movie. I do have some minor negatives, so I'll start off with those just to get them out of the way. Full disclosure, these minor negatives don't really affect my enjoyment of the movie. They're just some gripes that I have that could have made it more perfect, but it doesn't affect my enjoyment of the movie overall. It's still a 5 out of 5 movie. First off, I think some of the characters individually are weak, such as Mrs. Jarvis, Paul, Doug, and the twins Terry and Tina. They play off the other characters well, and all the characters have great dynamics with each other, but I feel like, individually, Mrs. Jarvis, Paul, Doug, and the twins Tina and Terry don't really get any sort of much growth, individually. You could argue for some of them, like with Paul, making his decision to stay with Samantha and, not cheat on one of the twins, I guess, is good kind of growth. And, but, besides that, I feel like none of them really grow individually as characters, but I feel like that's okay because they have good relationship growth with the other characters. So I feel like it's not that there isn't anything there, it's just individually they weren't as fleshed out as maybe they could have been, but that's okay. They work fine in the movie. Another minor negative is that I feel like they didn't really do enough with Rob's character. Not necessarily that his character was bad, because I loved Rob's character, and I actually felt like they did a good job with his character. I just felt like there could have been more done with his character, more they could have explored this idea of one of a past victim's relative coming back to hunt down, the killer of their relative is a pretty good idea. I like that idea. I just felt like they didn't really explore it more, because by the time Rob came face to face with Jason,
he died right then and there. There was no show off. I actually would have liked it if Rob survived the movie, because it could have, it maybe would have been cluttered having 3 survivors, but I would have liked it, and it could have built on more. And had they done, and they could have built on that in future movies. I know this was planned as the final movie, but clearly they didn't follow through with that. So they could have explored that in future movies with Rob, kind of being the the yin to Jason's yang, the Dr. Loomis to Michael Myers, his rival. But they didn't really do that, and they kind of had a missed opportunity there. But still, I loved Rob as a character. They did a great job with him in the movie. And my final minor negative is that I really do not like that Jason makes grunts and various noises throughout the movie. They're few and far between, so they're not as annoying as they were in parts 3. But they're there, and they're worth pointing out. And I don't think that... It doesn't bother me too much, but it doesn't, like I said in Friday the 13th Part 3's review, I don't think it's necessary for Jason to do that. I feel like he should just, you should just show the pain, but we don't need to hear Jason grunting or groaning in pain. Just show it, and we know he's in pain. That's all I got for minor negatives, though, so I think it's about time we go on to the positives of this movie, a big list of positives. What makes this movie so fantastic? Well, I'll start with the teenage characters, since I've already discussed them previously. But I feel like the stronger ones... I enjoyed all the teenage characters, but the strongest ones were Samantha, Sarah, Ted, and of course, Jimmy. I feel like they were the strongest individually, and I think they were also strong with each other. They played off each other well, had great chemistry. And this is because, Samantha is kind of like the one who is the girl who kind of sleeps around a lot, the more experienced girl. Sarah is the more recluse, shy girl and is trying to break out of her shell with, Doug and, start a romantic relationship with him. Ted is the douchebag of the movie, and, and eventually Jimmy, who is the most eccentric character in the film with Crispin Glover's fucking dance, which is amazing, by the way. But Jimmy grows, from his breakup and, proves Ted wrong by saying that he's not a dead fuck because he's able to get with one of the twins and, kind of, proves, and it's pretty satisfying because Ted's a douche. I also really like Tommy and Trish, our final duo, as protagonists. I think they were a great sibling pairing. They were fantastic together. Trish was one of the more better final girls because she put others and her brother's safety over hers. She was more concerned about everybody else's safety than her own, especially after Rob died. And yeah, she had her moments of stupidity, but I don't think that ruined her character. Every final girl is going to have, her moments of stupidity. And plus, she did fight back against Jason. She had plenty of moments to shine throughout the end of the movie. So while she had her stupid moments, every final girl is going to have that. It's just inevitable. And when, like I said, when you're in a horror situation like that, you're bound to make stupid mistakes. You're bound to do something that's very stupid. So I don't think it ruins her character overall. And Corey Feldman's Tommy was a very good final boy. He was fantastic. This is the beginning of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, so it'll be interesting to see how he grows throughout the films. I've seen each film one time, so besides the final chapter, I've seen it multiple times. But it'll be interesting to see how he grows, because it's been a while since I've seen Part 5 and Part 6. But Tommy's a very, very relatable kid in this movie because he's kind of like that nerdy outcast kind of kid. He's not really that popular. They don't showcase that, but you can tell from his character that he's not the kind of kid that at his school that would be looked up to. And we understood and sympathized, and he understood and sympathized with Jason in this movie, and even pulled a Ginny from Part 2 by trying to, reach him, try to reach his humanity, but he also wasn't fucking stupid, and he hacked Jason to death and made sure he was dead as shit. And as mentioned previously, Rob the Hitchhiker was a fantastic character, a missed opportunity in my mind, but he was really great in this film. I love the idea of one of the past victims from one of from the past movies, one of their relatives coming back to avenge their death against their killer. It's a really neat idea, and he could have been a really great rival to Jason, like I said, and could have been his yin to Jason's yang. Unfortunately, he was killed, and that's a shame, because if he wasn't killed, he could have been a really good rival that could have moved forward and could have been a protagonist we looked up to, because we would have sympathized with him in his plight. He didn't have as many moments to shine as a character, but I feel like he had a lot of good... he had enough moments to where he was a very heroic character, especially with his backstory and what he wanted to do and trying to hunt down Jason. I cared about him. I cared about his death. He's one of my favorite characters in the movie, and I wish he had lived, because it would have been a great idea to continue his story and kind of be like the Dr. Loomis. You know, he's the Dr. Loomis kind of type to Jason's Michael Myers type. You know, it just would have been a nice yin and yang. And finally, we have our hockey mask wearing killer himself, Jason Voorhees. How was Mr. Jason Voorhees in this film? He was fantastic in this movie. Jason was fucking awesome. Jason was, of course, played by Ted White, who is one of my favorite Jason actors. He's not my ultimate favorite, but he is one of my favorites. And I think, I think Kane Hodder still holds that space. But Ted White is fantastic. He really nails Jason, and I feel like he did what the other Jasons didn't, and really gave Jason a lot of personality and character, especially anger. Like, I could feel Jason's anger throughout this movie. He made Jason scary and threatening in this movie, and I love the way he just portrays Jason in this movie. How he's fucking angry at everybody, and he's pissed off, and I think somebody told him that this was his final movie because he fucking killed everybody. He had no filter. He didn't give a shit. The kills in this movie were fantastic. Of course, they were done by Tom Savini, the legend himself, who did the effects of the first movie, and he did not hold back. He gave us a great special effects for the kills, because he did an amazing job as always. They were very creative. They were set up well. I showed a lot of kills in this movie, with Paul getting, stabbed in the dick, throwing out the window kill, Jason, stabbing Jimmy with the corkscrew. Just so many fantastic kills in this movie. I was never bored throughout this movie because the kills were fantastic and really well done. This is Jason at his best. This is what Jason should be. A bunch of creative kills against these fucking horny teenagers. And finally, I really like the setting and the atmosphere of the movie as well. I think it was really great too. I like the two houses in the middle of the woods and, the dark, rainy night. It really helps sell the mood. It makes this movie very tense and suspenseful, and the music does a really good job of misleading you into thinking you're safe when you really aren't. You think one moment that Jason isn't around and, nothing's going on, and it's just, a scene of characters, talking or doing something, and then Jason pops out of nowhere and fucking surprises you. It's really well done. The music was fantastic, and the setting and atmosphere was just fantastic because, like I said, the whole two houses in the middle of the woods and the dark, rainy atmosphere like all these movies have, this is what we want out of a Friday the 13th movie. Good atmosphere that gives us great suspense, great tension, and we feel for the characters. It only sells it more when we're anticipating the next kill. Overall, guys, I would recommend this movie to fans and newcomers of the Friday the 13th franchise. It is easily the best movie of the franchise. It is my personal favorite Friday the 13th movie. Some may argue Part 6, Final Chapter, or Part 4, as we should really call it, is really my favorite in the franchise. It's my personal favorite. It provides a satisfying ending to Human Jason. It gives you everything you want in a Friday the 13th movie. A good Jason, good characters, good kills, good setting and atmosphere, just has everything you want. It's not a perfect movie, but again, no movie is. It really happens, and I'm not looking for perfect in this movie. I know Friday the 13th movies are going to have some of its flaws, but this movie was perfect. And had this truly been the end of the Friday the 13th franchise, while I would have been disappointed that, you know, there wouldn't be any more movies, I would not be disappointed in the ending. But of course, that did not end up happening because we did eventually get Part 5. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give it a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on this film. Do you love this movie like me? Do you think it's one of the best Friday the 13th movies out there? You know, do you think this is the best of the franchise? Do you think this is amazing? Do you hate this movie? I would be interested in that as well. Like, what makes you put off by this movie? You know, what puts it down for you? Like, what makes it not a good experience? Or are you just somewhere in the middle where you think it's okay, but it's nothing special, but it's nothing bad either? I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Friday the 13th content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content, I'll have more Friday the 13th reviews on the way. Actually, in a couple months, I will be uploading a Friday the 13th Part 5, a New Beginning review, because there will be a Friday the 13th in December. So look forward to that, because that'll be happening, and I will go into my thoughts on that movie. But of course, I love Jason, and I love the Friday the 13th franchise, so each Friday the 13th we'll be reviewing more Jason movies, but if you demand more of them, of course, we will do more of them. You can also follow me on Facebook, where I have discussions about things we talk about on both my channels, and Twitch, where I hope to live stream in the future. So in my next video, I will continue Scooby Month with a new Scooby-Doo movies review. I have no idea which episode it'll be, because this is being recorded ahead of time. And of course, this is being uploaded in September during Scooby Month. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little special Friday the 13th review during Scooby Month. But yes, there will be an episode review of one of the new Scooby-Doo movies. Whichever that one is, I hope you guys enjoy it, and, you know, look forward to that. You know, Scooby-Doo is a big part of my channel, and I love talking Scooby-Doo, so if you're interested in that as well, you know, come check it out. It'll be a good time. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed my review of Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and why I believe it's one of the best. It's the best of the franchise. And join me in a couple months, where we'll be reviewing Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, with the copycat Jason. Oh boy, that'll be an interesting one to talk about. The one where they tried to move on without Jason, but it failed. Well, we'll see what I think about it when we go into it in December. So join me then, and thank you guys so much for watching this video. And as always, peace out.